very interesting. My doctor brings me a glass of water. Okay, Doc. I think this is the place in the movie where I'm supposed to say, give it to me straight.
All right. It's worse than your first tests would have indicated. Your other doctors were right. What has happened is a series of lesions, more than 80, have spread out across your chest cavity. In the x-rays, it looks like a star exploding. It's an unusually aggressive type of cancer. It's extraordinary, really.
Extraordinary? How about that?
Mr. Griffin, you probably have about another year to live. Not more than 2.
So you can't operate?
No.
Is there anything out there? Anything in development or in Europe or something that can buy me some time?
I'm afraid not.
You can't save my life?
No.
Can you validate my parking?
Hey, boys. 2-on-1. You think you can beat your old man?
You don't even like basketball.
Oh, I don't know about that. You know, I've been working on one of those, yeah, like that, one of them sky hook type things. I've been practicing.
You work all the time. When do you have time to practice?
You can't stop me. You can only hope to contain me. Come on.
What are you doing here?
Playing some basketball.
You know you're supposed to call first.
The frustration and fear of it is based on society's history of trying to figure out everything, control everything, conquer everything. We've learned to fly, travel in space, bend atoms to our will, but we can't conquer death.
This is one of the best movies you will probably never see in your life because it's 12 years old now and you're never going to see it. It didn't really do all that well in the box office because nobody actually really wanted a movie about death, right? And not one that was realistic anyway. And this one totally is. And the reason I like it, I'm going to talk about it a little bit more as we go through the lesson today. But part of the reason I like it is because it is so straightforward, it's so honest, and it doesn't pull any punches at all, much like the book of Ecclesiastes. So let me get back to where we were and review just a little bit about this book and see if we can finish it. So on Monday, we talked about this idea of what does it tell us about the person of God, right? Would God be any fun as a friend? And we talked about how that might seem sort of sacrilegious or whatever, but because of Tozer's comment, what comes to our mind when we think about God is the most important thing about us. I think this is incredibly important, and what Ecclesiastes is going to do is give us a sense in the midst of the curse what God wants for us. So just again to help you get your head back in the game, we looked at a couple different views We looked at Walt Kaiser's view, which was basically this, that if you are close to God, you will enjoy life. And if you are far away from God, you will experience the vanity of it. Now, the problem, of course, with that was, Kaiser is right when he says God gives you the ability to enjoy life and is pleased when we do so. But whatever this vanity thing is, in the book, as you read through, everybody, the good guys and the bad guys, get a full dose of it. So what in the world is it? Well, we looked at dictionaries. We looked at the passages, Romans 8 and Genesis 3, and determined that when the writer uses the word vanity, he's really talking about the trouble which comes from the curse of Genesis 3. Now, that's a hard thing to totally understand because, like water to a fish, it's so around us that we cannot even imagine life without the curse. What would life be like, right? And so you're trying to imagine what seems normal and what Solomon's going to say is totally abnormal, given the original plan of God. But all those things, from flat tires to bad breath to flu and mono and cancer and death, all that stuff is part of the trouble with toil and trouble with the curse and trouble with death, right? So where are we going to go? Well, what Solomon is trying to do is to talk about before the kingdom comes. We can always look forward to the kingdom and say, well, someday God's going to fix it all. Yes, that's true. He will. But how does he expect us to live right now under the sun, which is his phrase for this life right now? How does he expect us to live right now under the sun when life is so crummy so often? And that's where he's going to go. So let's follow him on his discussion. And where he's going to start is this. He's going to say that the curse is everywhere, right? Everything, all of life is affected by the curse. And to him, that means this, that even though man was intended to rule over, now we die and are 6 feet under. And the sun and the moon and the stars and the rivers and all the stuff keeps going. Oops, going too fast here. And the trouble is that nobody remembers people. Verse 11. No one remembers people. A generation comes, a generation goes, but the earth just keeps going and there's just something so wrong. Now, you don't realize how wrong that is until you have lost someone and had to leave them in the past and felt that life is lonelier on a permanent basis because of it. And Solomon understands this and he says, look, I just want you to know that I tried to figure this out. I tried to fix it and you can't. What is twisted cannot be straightened. What is lacking cannot be counted. You cannot begin to find a cure for the curse while under the earth. Now, the reason why he says this is because he tries 3 different cures. I've kind of labeled them in a sloppy way. Maybe I can't find better words for them. But sensuality, intellectualism, and work are going to take us through chapters 2, 3, 4, 5, and part of 6, okay? So like the little kid who touches something hot, such as a hot stove, and as soon as you feel the pain, you withdraw, you pull back. As soon as you feel the pain of the curse and recognize it as such, you pull back and try to insulate yourself so you don't have to experience that anymore. And so he tries to find 3 different things that cure it, and what he's going to say in the end is, nothing can take it away. It's always going to get you. The curse is always going to win. It's going to find its way into your life in creepy ways. It's going to creep in with sickness and difficulty and broken relationships, and ultimately, you're going to die. Now, there's ultimately some hope here, okay? But at this point, it's got to get dark before it gets light. So, let's take a look at these cures that he tries. And the first one is this one. Sensuality is ineffective. Now, stay with me here and catch the argument that the writer's trying to make. He's going to go down through here and he's going to talk about a bunch of sensual things. When I say sensual, I don't mean necessarily bad. I just mean things that come through the senses. Things that you can see, things that you can feel, things that you can touch, things that you can drink. All these kinds of senses, what he's going to say is, he's not going to comment on the morality of them and say they're evil or bad or they're good. What he's going to say is, whether they're good or bad, whether they're evil or good, none of these things can fix the problem of the curse. Are you with me here? None of these things can fix the curse. So we're going to say sensuality is ineffective at solving the problem of the curse. Right? So I don't think I want to spend a whole lot of time on this. I'll just say something about the first verse. I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. So he's actually kind of like a scientist here doing research and saying, is there something here that can keep us from the curse? So I tried laughter. I said, oh, that's foolish. And what does pleasure accomplish? Now, again, remember the end goal. He's not trying to say that laughter or pleasure don't entertain us. What he's saying is they don't stop the curse. Now, deep down here in the Hebrew language, the laughter is one of those words that's used for kind of good, clean fun. Like, you know, this is the nice Sunday afternoon family picnic. And he says that doesn't work. The word for pleasure is one of those kind of, not, I wouldn't say dirty, but it's one of those like Saturday night raucous kind of what happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas kind of thing, right? He's not trying to comment on the morality. He's not trying to say, oh, make sure you just have the Sunday afternoon picnics and that's all. That's not what he's talking about. Whether it's good or bad, doesn't matter. It doesn't solve the problem of the curse. All right? Doesn't insulate you from it. Then I tried cheering myself with wine or drugs or whatever, right? My mind's still guiding me. So he isn't just kind of throwing himself to the wind and saying, let me enjoy any kind of sin there is. Although you might think that as you look at his life. But he's not saying that. He said, I'm trying to figure this out. Is there some sort of pleasure which can anesthetize me to the pain of the curse? So he does these things. He does this stuff. He makes building projects. He built houses for himself. He has singers and a harem and the delights of the heart of man. And one thing you can't accuse him of is understatement here, or overstatement. I mean, when he says a harem, boy, did he ever, right? We talked about that before. 1,000 different women. Probably didn't know all their names. Couldn't have known all their names. Hi, my name's Solomon. Yes, I'm one of your wives. Sorry, didn't recognize you. I just got so many here, right? So as you look at what he says here, as he kind of concludes this section, you can see this section goes all the way to verse 11. As he concludes it, he says, I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my work, and here is what I found. Oh, good. What did you find, Solomon? Well, this. When I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was vanity, chasing after the wind, and nothing was gained under the sun. What's he mean? Again, the curse swallowed all this up. This didn't solve the problem of the curse. So you might think, well, duh, of course, nothing's going to solve that. But how many people do you know who, when they feel a certain pain, go to these kind of things for comfort? A lot of people do. Maybe you do. So he says that sensuality, feeling, you can't feel away the curse, kind of. So he says, okay, I try something else, and that's this. 3C, intellectualism. Now again, that's probably not the best word. I didn't want to say philosophy, lest we give philosophy and Gilhooly a bad name. I wasn't trying to do that. But it's the realm of thinking, okay? And again, I don't want to make thinking sound bad. But what he's saying here is that in his thought life, he couldn't think it away. And I'll let him speak here. Here's what he says. Then, notice the verse 12 is this transition, right? Then I turned to my thoughts to consider wisdom and also madness and folly. For what more can a king's successor do than what's already been done? Now, when he says, what more can the king's successor do, he's talking about verses 1 to 11. I've already done it all. I've already felt it all, right? So I'm going to move from the realm of doing to the realm of thinking or knowing or intellectualism. And here's what he finds out. I saw that wisdom is better than folly, just as light is better than darkness. Okay, so it's better to be smart than dumb, right? We'll grant him that. The wise man has eyes in his head, while the fool walks in darkness. So it's better to be smart than to be dumb. But I came to realize that the same fate overtakes them both. Now, if you're getting your head into the Ecclesiastes game, can you go with me here? Can you predict what he's going to say next? It's really better to be wise than be stupid, but I came to realize the same fate overtakes them both. What is that? Both going to die, right? Exactly. The curse is going to get you, and that's exactly where he goes when he says this. The wise man, like the fool, will not be long remembered. Remember chapter 1, verse 11? In days to come, both will be forgotten. Like the fool, the wise man too must die. So, I hated life because the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me, and there's that word again. All of it is vanity. The curse gets it all. So at this point then, he moves on to the fourth one, the pursuit of labor is ineffective. Now, this, again, may seem rather silly to you, but let me try to simplify it just for a second. Under 2c, he says you can't feel away the curse. Under 3c, he says you can't think away the curse. And under 4c, it's going to be what? You can't work away the curse. Now, you might say again to yourself, well, that's just so silly. Who would be so stupid as to think you could work away the curse? I don't know. You tell me. Do you know anybody who's a workaholic? Do you know anybody who works far more than they really need to work? Have you ever seen anybody who, whether it's in business or in school, they work far more than they need to? Why are they doing that? Why do they feel so driven to build something, to create something? Could it be that they think, like the pharaohs who built the pyramids, that if you can just build something or make a name or build a company, that somehow you can grasp at some sort of eternality that you don't get apart from that? People are driven, and they don't even know why, but sometimes work is the way that people try to dull the pain. He says here, I should have gone so fast. He says, I hated all the things I told for under the sun because I must leave the one who comes after me. And who knows whether he'll be a wise man or a fool. Yet he will have control over all the work into which I have poured my effort and skill under the sun. Now, this is not just a hypothetical for Solomon. This is a real thing, right? When Solomon dies, what happens to the kingdom? Remember? Solomon dies, the whole thing is cut in two. Yeah, now the reason for that is because his son takes over, and his son is a total idiot. Rehoboam comes along, and the 12 tribes say, we will follow you like we followed your father. Will you be a good king? And he says, no, my dad whipped you with whips. I'm going to whip you with scorpions. And they say, see you later, right? Splits it in two. He's a total idiot. And Solomon is right here. All my work, I give it to this son, and what's he going to do with it? Which is a reason why everything you work for, and if you have to leave it to somebody else, they could just squander it completely. So my heart began to despair over all my toilsome labor under the sun. For man may do his work with wisdom and knowledge and skill. Then he's got to leave it. Someone who has not worked for it, and the curse gets me because I don't live forever. So at this point then, he gives us his first mini conclusion. And it is this, and we have seen it before. Man can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in his work. This is from the hand of God, for who can eat and who can find enjoyment without him? But to the sinner, he gives the task of gathering and storing up. Now, this is not spoken with hopelessness. He's not trying to say, well, I guess this is the best we can do. He's saying, even though the curse is real, God still wants you to enjoy life. Let me just summarize his words like this. Although there is no immediate cure for the pain of the curse, God still wants you to be deeply satisfied in life. So when you feel the curse closing in, now maybe you haven't even recognized it as that. Remember that list of red things we put up on the screen? The sickness, the trouble, the broken relationships, the loneliness, whatever it is that's part of that curse. When that pain starts to close in and you're tempted to run, you will only find that satisfaction if you turn to him, not away from him, towards your own cure, pleasure, or work, right? So in some sense, this is sort of a mini conclusion. This is not where we're ultimately going to go. But Solomon says, man, I tried all these things. Forget it. They don't work. Don't try to think they will cure things. Your only real hope here is in God, because God is good and wants you to enjoy life. Now, he's going to keep saying that over and over and over. Watch the way it shows up here, okay? For example, this passage is one of those very sort of sing-songy kinds of poems that we tend to look at. Oh, there's a time for everything. Time to plant, time to uproot, time to heal, time to kill, time to build, time to tear down, right? And it just sort of seems like a cute little poem that doesn't mean much. But look at what's in the list carefully. Recognize Solomon's point in the book. Do you see something up there on the screen that doesn't belong there? How about if I do this? You see what Solomon's thinking? What do you think? Every time I look at a list like that, I think, wow, let's see now, the born, plant, healing, building, laughing, dancing, oh, I kind of like the red stuff. Don't you? Did you notice there happens to be blue up there too? How often do you pray, dear Jesus, give me more red in my life and keep away the blue? You ever pray that? You ever want that? You ever try to pull back from the pain of the curse and say, I don't want the blue, I don't want the blue. Jesus, save me from the blue. What Solomon is saying is you might think that, but you can't simply choose red and avoid the blue. The curse will find its way into your life in significant ways. How do you know? Because it says it's appointed. This is going to happen. This will happen to you and to me. You cannot live your life trying to weave around and just get the good stuff, because as soon as you do that, you're going to run smack dab right into the blue. The curse is going to get you. You think, well, that's not a very cheery thing. Well, you know, we're not to the cheery part yet, okay? And that's true. So he will finish this then right here in verse 12, right? This is the next verse or so. I know there's nothing better for men than to be happy and do good while they live, that everyone may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all his toil. This is a gift of God. Now, this is the second time he said it. God really wants you to enjoy life in the midst of the curse. Okay? Are you sure? Yeah, pretty sure, right? Look at this verse. And we talked about this one before, right? Someone who doesn't understand the whole book would look and say, well, wait, that's not true. But all he's trying to say is, as far as this life is concerned, you don't have a chance of getting out of it alive any better than the roadkill does. And yet, after verses 19 and 20, verse 22, so I saw there is nothing better for man to enjoy his work because that is his lot, right? So mixed in here in this whole thing is the curse is real, but so is God's goodness. The curse is real, but so is the fact that God still wants you to enjoy life. Really? Are you sure? Yep. And you read here, and you think, man, look at this. I saw the tears of the oppressed, they have no comforter. Power was on the side of the oppressors, they have no comforter. I declared that the dead who'd already died are happier than the living who are still alive. You think, this guy needs therapy. He's depressed. What's wrong here, right? But the truth is, he's simply being absolutely honest. Do you understand that a lot of people who don't live in the country where you live experience horrendous conditions? All you have to do is travel overseas to some countries that I won't name to find people who are living in absolute squalor and war and horrible conditions that you can hardly even imagine. And that's just in 2018. If you go back a century or two or three into history and take a look at what life was like for a lot of people throughout time, Solomon's description is pretty true. When we think about death, we don't like to think about how difficult it can be. So if you have seen a movie about death, maybe it was this one, The Bucket List. It's kind of old now, Jack Nicholson or Morgan Freeman, right? But you look at that kind of thing, and it's a movie about old guys who die in the end, and it's okay because it's a funny movie and they get things right, and they're old anyway, right? But nobody wants to talk about people who die young, which is what this one is about, right? Griffin and Phoenix, and I just want to tell you one story from that, and again, I'm going to, spoiler alert, I'm going to spoil this for you, but that's okay, you're never going to look at it anyway. If you want to see the movie, all you have to do is go to The Fault in Our Stars. It's just an updated version of this movie. If you've seen it, it really is. I mean, the plot line is exactly the same. But what's happening in this movie is that these two people meet, and you've already seen Griffin. He's the one who has the cancer diagnosis, right? And he meets Phoenix, and the two of them sort of fall in love, but they don't, neither one of them will enter into this relationship very deep because they both have a secret. His is that he doesn't have any time, and as it turns out, she doesn't either. And finally it gets out and they realize, oh my goodness, here we are, right? And what are we going to do now? What a cruel trick of fate this is. And so at this one point in the movie, she's in a hospital bed, pretty sure she's going to die. And he is there with her, this woman whom he loves. And he wants to be there, but she doesn't want to cause him pain. So she says to him, I want you to leave. And everything within him is like, no, I want to be here and comfort you and stay with you. And she says, I know, but I don't want you to have any more pain than you have to. You leave. And so he honors her wish, and he leaves. And he leaves the hospital, and his heart is just crushed. And he goes out, and he sees his car. And throughout the storyline, throughout their relationship, they've been kind of working on restoring this old 66 Chevy together. And now, when he comes out of the hospital, you see it for the first time, totally finished. Beautiful, old, classic car. And he gets up to the thing, and he realizes that the tire is flat. It's like, come on. The worst day of my life, and now I got a stupid flat tire. It's like, oh gosh. So he goes out to the back of the car, and gets the tire jack to come over and jack up the car, put a new tire on. And he's sitting there. He takes this big tire jack, he just takes it, and he just goes, and smashes in the front windshield. You go, oh gosh, it was a beautiful car, and he just smashed the front windshield. And then I'm thinking right here, okay, that's $200, we can fix that, just calm down, right? And then he takes the tire jack, and he hits the front hood, boom, and smashes the paint, right? And the top of it, and it's just like, oh gosh, he just demolished this car. And then all the people around in the movie are looking at him thinking, oh, this guy's crazy, he's insane, but he doesn't stop there. He goes to the next car that he doesn't own, and he smashes that windshield in. Then he goes all the way down the row, and the sirens are going off, and people are going, oh, this guy's crazy, and the police come and arrest him, and everybody in that scene looks at him like, oh, this guy is off his rocker, he's crazy, right? It feels like he is. But I think if Solomon were to watch that scene, Solomon say, oh man, there were insane people in that crowd, but he's the only one who wasn't insane. He's the only one who raged against death and said, this is so wrong, you can't just accept it as normal. Everybody else is thinking, oh, that's really abnormal. He's saying, no, death is so wrong here, right? And I think he's onto something. We're not, trying to say you should go smash people's cars, but you get the point here, right? That he rages back and says, this is wrong. And that's what Solomon's doing, saying, man, this is so wrong. And yet, in the midst of it, he finishes this stuff up. And again, he says, look, I realize it's good and proper for man to eat and drink and find satisfaction in his toilsome labor. And this is now the fourth time he said this. Is the curse real? Yes. Is God still wants you to enjoy life? Yes. And I think you can kind of finish this first major section with this kind of a picture that you have seen before. We saw it way back in Genesis 3 of the cherubim guarding the way to the tree of life. But notice what, again, the artist has done here. You see God the Father back here with tears in his eyes. Tears, rivers of tears coming out his eyes because he looks and he says, oh man, they've caused this curse. They've brought this curse on themselves. And I don't hate them. I don't hate them. I'm not trying to pursue them. It breaks my heart what they have done, and I still love them so much in the midst of this. And that's the picture that Solomon is trying to paint here in the first 6 chapters. So with that, let's move on to the second part of this book, okay? The main argument of the book is that God wants you to enjoy life. The first 6 chapters say the curse makes it hard. That's where we've been. Where we want to go is this, and this is chapters 6 to 11 then. Even though man does not know a couple of things, we'll see them in a second, God still intends that man enjoy life as a gift. Or this may be a better way to say it. Watch out for these things that man does not know, and he's going to show us 2 of them. Watch out for these things that man does not know that will keep you from enjoying life to the fullest. Right? So the first half of the book, he's trying to overcome this idea of the trouble of the curse and saying, the curse might give you a message that God doesn't like you, but it's not true. God still wants you to enjoy life. Now, if you're really into this and you want to enjoy life, then the second half of the book, watch out for these 2 things that will keep you from enjoying it to the fullest. And here's what they are. The introduction to the second half of the book is right here in chapter 6, verses 10 to 12. And the verse says, who knows what is good for man in life during the few and vain days he passes through like a shadow? Who can tell him what will happen under the sun afterwards? So, The first thing that man does not know, and you're going to see this phrase repeated over these chapters. The first thing man does not know is what is good. Now, I'll explain that in a second, but just make sure you write it down, get it. We don't understand always what is good. And then number two, we don't always know, man does not know the future. What will happen to him afterwards. So you with me here? First half of the book, God wants you to enjoy life in spite of the curse. Second half of the book, in order to enjoy life, don't let the fact that you don't know what is good, and don't let the fact that you don't know the future keep you from enjoying it. You with me? I want to make sure you get that whole big picture idea. So now, let me explain these two things. We don't know what is good. Chapter 7. Man does not know what is good. So if I ask you in the very simplest way, are you having a good day or a bad day? You'd probably have an answer for me. You having a good day or are you having a bad day? It's a little too early to tell, not quite sure yet, but I'm pretty sure I'll figure it out before the day is over. Okay, that's fine. The trouble is, if I say to you, are you sure? What would you say? You would say, are you kidding me? Who are you to question whether I'm having a good day or bad day? I know if I'm having a good day or bad day. Yes, I'm sure. Solomon says, well, are you really sure? Because I got a couple things to say to you. First of all, he says, a good name is better than fine perfume. Now, let me just break this down really quickly. When he says a good name, he's talking about your character, your reputation, right? A good name is better than a fine perfume. What does perfume do? Perfume doesn't actually change who you are, right? It just changes your appearance. We put it on so that we don't stink so bad and we're more tolerable around people. But really, what's more important is our character rather than our appearance, right? I mean, on a test, we would all get that correct. Which is more important, how you look or who you are? B, who you are. Yes. But in everyday life, how do you answer the question? Are you more worried about what people think about you or how you appear or what's really going on inside your heart? I mean, it's something simple. You're walking down the sidewalk and you trip, and what's the first thing you do? You look around, oh my gosh, did anybody see that? They might think I'm a total fool. Does it really matter? Really? Or you look in the mirror and you think, oh my gosh, what a bad hair day. Oh, my ears are too big. Oh, if my nose just wasn't... We stress out so much about what we look like or how we appear rather than what we are, right? And if you would give less pressure on yourself or put less pressure on yourself for what other people think of you, think how freeing that could be. Now, here's another one, very quickly. I got to get moving, so I have time to do this. Let me ask you this. This afternoon for lunch, the dean has given us just this class, $10,000 so that we can go out to the finest restaurant, forget the rest of the classes of the day. We can go to the finest restaurant in Dayton. That's option A. Option B is there's a really good funeral in Springfield that we could also go to as a class. So I know this is a hard choice. Which would you rather do? Restaurant or funeral? You think, oh man, I really like a good funeral, so that's a really hard question. That would be good. That would be good to go to the restaurant, right? Solomon says, look, it's better to go to a house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting. Why? Because death is the destiny of every man, and the living should take this to heart. Do you like to go to funerals? No. If you do, there's something wrong with you. Right? I don't like funerals. But you know what? Every time I go to a funeral, I come away and I say this. Every time I go to a funeral, I come away and I say, man, life really is short. And in light of that, I need to be a better dad. I need to be a better husband. I need to be a better teacher because life is short. And ultimately, I am much better off when I go to a funeral than when I go out for a party. And you look at me and you say, are you having a good day? I said, oh man, it's a terrible day. I said, I just came back from a funeral. God says, you don't know ultimately what is good for you and what is not. That may be better for you than something else. Or, very quickly, worst day of my life. Absolute worst day of my life. December 12th, 1986. My dad called up and told us he had cancer. My wife and I did a really stupid thing. We watched a movie that night about somebody who died because of cancer. And when that story was over, I started to cry, and I couldn't stop crying for a half an hour. I mean, it's never happened to me before or since. I couldn't stop. I tried. I couldn't stop. I just kept crying because I could see it being played on the screen what was going to happen to my dad. Worst day of my life. 6 months later, my dad calls back. My dad says, you know what? Because of the radiation and the chemo, doctors say the cancer's gone. Right? And I look back and I thought that first day was the worst day of my life, but because we found it in time, it was the best day, and I didn't know it. What Solomon is saying is you don't know what is good. You don't know the entire plan of God for your life. You don't always know what is good and what is bad, and you think it's a really bad day, and God might be planning that out to be the best day ever. All you have to do is ask the disciples on Saturday, hey, how's your day going? How's your weekend going? Are you kidding? Are you kidding? Friday was the worst day ever. But then the resurrection comes along, and now all of a sudden we look back and what kind of Friday do we call it? It's a good Friday, right? So the point here, would you rather listen to a comedian or be chewed out by your RA? Oh, I don't know. Really like being criticized. Yeah, well, it's better to heed a wise man's rebuke than to listen to Song of Fools. Point made. You got it, okay? We don't always know what is a good day and what's a bad day. You may not even really know. So don't let the feeling that this is bad somehow keep you from enjoying life. It might be the best thing you ever had and didn't know it. Number 2, man does not know the future. So I reflected on all this and concluded that the righteous and the wise and what they do are in God's hands, but no man knows whether love or hate awaits him. Now, the point simply is we don't know the future, and psychologists tell us that 90% of what we worry about in the future never even happens. And we either worry about the future or effectively we only live in it. And what I mean is, some people say, man, if I can just hang on until Thanksgiving break, or if I can just hang on until Christmas break, or if I can just hang on until summer, or if I can just hang on until I get married, or until I get a job, or until I have a house and kids, and then they say, until the kids are gone out of the house, or until, and you keep going off in the future, and you forget to live now, to enjoy life now. And what Ecclesiastes is going to say is, go eat your food with gladness and drink your wine with a joyful heart, for it is now that God favors what you do. What God is trying to say here, what the writer of Ecclesiastes is trying to say is, you don't know what the future is. Don't keep putting things off, because you don't even know if you have a future. You enjoy life right now. Again, he's not trying to say throw caution to the wind. He's simply saying, in the daily work which God gives you, make sure that you sit down and enjoy the food and enjoy the friends and enjoy the laughter in all of life, because this is what God's will is for you. Now I'm just going to skip over some of this quickly. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. From the grave where you're going, there's neither working nor planning nor knowledge nor wisdom. Let me just say something about the attitude of this verse. Reading the whole book, this is not this is not sarcasm. He's not saying, sure, go ahead and enjoy your life. You're just going to die anyway. It's not what he's saying. What he's saying is, yes, you're going to die. In reality, the curse is going to get you, but God wants you to find something your hand likes to do. The career you've chosen, make sure it's something you really enjoy and do it with all your might while you can now. Enjoy that. Right? And then he says this, some wise advice in light of the fact that we don't know the future. Give portions to 7, yes to 8, if you don't know what disaster may come upon the land. Now, that doesn't sound very spiritual, but it is, right? Today, we would say what? What's a modern proverb that says the same thing verse 2 says? Come on, it's not that hard. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? Doesn't sound like very spiritual advice, right? It seems like the spiritual thing to do would be to say, Dear Jesus, tell me which basket to put my eggs in, and I'll do that, and that way we'll avoid disaster. God says, I'm not going to answer that prayer. I'm not going to tell you what the future holds. I want you to diversify, and if you're going to graduate school, put out applications to 5 different ones. You don't know which one you're going to be accepted at. Or how about this one? This is great advice. If clouds are full of water, they pour rain upon the earth. Whether a tree falls to the south or the north, in the place where it falls, there will it lie. Amen? Isn't that good? Isn't that deep? Don't you feel like memorizing that right now? Say, gosh, I didn't know that. If a tree falls, that's where it's going to... Really? Yes. And here's what it means. In this context, here's what it means. When I lived in New York, I had this driveway that was kind of muddy, and there were trees too close to it, kept it wet. So in order to dry it out, I had to cut the trees down. And so I was cutting down these really big pine trees, and I had the safety rope on the tree, but I hadn't tightened it because it wasn't time for the tree to fall yet, but the tree didn't know that. And the tree started to fall, right? And the trouble is the tree started to fall into the power lines in the backyard that furnished power to the entire village to the north of me. And the tree hits the power lines, and they hit each other, and sparks start flying. It's like the 4th of July. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, Miller, you were so stupid. Why did you do this? This is going to destroy everything. And just at that time, the safety line, it's made out of nylon. It catches the tree, and it pulls it back. It's like, it comes back the other way, thinking like on a rubber band. You know, I'm thinking, oh, praise God. And then over here, I realized my car's over here, and it's like, boom, came down like within 8 inches of the car, right? Didn't hit it at all. But I'm thinking, oh, gosh, what a total idiot I am. I can't believe I did that. Whether the tree falls to the south or north, where it falls, there will it lie. And I say to myself, okay, that's it. I'm done. I'm not going to do this again, right? Because I didn't understand where that would go. But, man, if it had hit there, I'd been in big trouble. What he's trying to say is this. When you are working, when you're living life, you don't always know how things are going to turn out. But when it does, that's the way it happened. Don't sweat it. And here's the problem. A lot of times, you do something, it doesn't turn out the way you like it, and you say, I'm never doing that again. You ask her out one time, and she says, no, I don't want to go because I have to wash my hair, or some really lame excuse. And it's so embarrassing because she knows and you know, and you're thinking, okay, that's it, I'm done, not doing it again. Solomon says, you don't know how it's going to work out. Keep trying, keep giving it a shot, keep asking, keep living, and don't live in fear of the way things might turn out because you don't know the future. If you let that fear control you, you won't ever try anything new or try everything a second time. So don't let that keep you from enjoying, from living, from experimenting, from going after life with everything you can. So with that, let me get to the conclusion. Light is sweet, and it pleases the eyes to see the sun. However many years a man may live, let him enjoy them all. So notice the red stuff. You see this? If I ask you to write out the 10 Commandments, would you have written that out as one of them? Because you could have. If I'd ask you to write out any of the commands of God which He really wants to see done, would you have written out, let man enjoy them all? Because it is. This is a command of God. However many years a man may live, let him enjoy them all. Let him remember the days of darkness, for there'll be many. Everything to come is vanity. Now again, in the context of the book, what he's saying is this. As age increases, so does the grip of the curse. Does that make sense to you? The older you get, the more your body starts to feel it. So, be happy, young man, while you're young, and let your heart give you joy in the days of your youth. Follow the ways of your heart and whatever your eyes see. But know that for all these things, God will bring you into judgment. Now again, the tone of this is not sarcastic. He's not saying, oh, go sow your wild oats and then God's going to get you for that one. What he's saying is, go, enjoy life. Now God's going to evaluate everything. Do it according to His rules and you will really enjoy life and God will evaluate when it's over. So banish anxiety for youth and vigor, are going to get swallowed up by the curse. There'll come a time when you don't have the energy to do what you want to do. And then he talks about your body getting older. It's going to happen that the sun and the light and the moon and the stars are going to grow dark. Now, they're not really going to grow dark, but when you get cataracts, they appear to grow dark. Seriously. The keepers of the house tremble and the strong men stoop. When, as you get older, you start to bend over and your hands tremble. You ever seen a grandparent like that? When the grinders cease, because they're few, your teeth fall out, right? Those looking through the windows grow dim, and as it turns out, your almond tree blossoms, your hair turns white, and then you die. And the curse wins. So in light of it, what does he say? Now that all has been heard, here's the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments. For this is the whole duty of man, or this will make a man whole. It ties up so much of that wisdom literature theme that God totally wants you to enjoy life. And if you follow his rules, you will find the best life. And so he says, even though the curse is here, is God angry at you and me? And the answer is no, no, no. Like that father who has tears running down his face, says, man, I can't not wait to bring you into the kingdom. But until that happens, even now, I want you to enjoy life because he is good. So I go back to the original question. Would God be any fun as a friend? And let me just say this. If there is a moment's hesitation in your mind about how you would answer this question, then you still don't get it. Would God be any fun as a friend? When you come to peel back the satanic layers of deception and confusion, and you find out who the God of Scripture is, the only right answer has to be this one. If you knew him as he really is, there is no one else you'd rather be with. So if you were jumping in your car to go out on Friday night and God walked up or Jesus walked up and said, can I come too? The only right answer would be, oh, please do. And then the party's really going to start. There's a reason why the very first miracle is turning water to wine at a wedding. It's the very first miracle. The last one's Lazarus, but in the book of John, the very first miracle is that one. Why is that? What happens if we don't have any wine? Is that a big deal? Does anybody lose their life? No. But you don't get to enjoy life as much there. The very first miracle is Jesus has come to bring the party, to enjoy life, to make it really, really good. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy, and I have come that they might have life and have it to the full. And he wasn't just talking about heaven. I like the way Frederick Buechner has said it. The place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. And he catches the idea there that God isn't interested in you living a life of ease. But that's completely different from totally enjoying life. If you and I could just go back in time and spend 30 days with the Apostle Paul on one of his journeys, and you get chucked into prison, you get put in stocks, and you sing at the top of your lungs at night in praise of God, and you go bounce from place to place to place, and you get persecuted, and you see people saved. At the end of 30 days, if we ask you, what was your life like over those 30 days? And we said, was it good? You would say, oh my gosh, it was unbelievably good. Was it comfortable? Oh, heavens, no. Did you feel like you were connected to real life and God? Yes. We made eternal differences. It was so good. It was so satisfying. It was so fulfilling. I just want to go back and do that all the time. Right? That's what Ecclesiastes is talking about. When you get a hold of who God is and understand him and become part of his mission, this is the way to totally enjoy life, because God is the best friend ever. Right? And that's the message of this book.